Welcome, drivers, to Tech on Deck. This is Behind the Wheel. This is a podcast for drivers and industry professionals in the transportation industry. Behind the Wheel is our series where we're going to be talking to actual drivers and the people that actually move these vehicles around the country. Today, we're going to be joined by Shane. He is a driver. I am your host, Daniel Kinsman. Dan Shipley is the co-host, and we together are the founder and co-founder. Well, I am the co-founder of Flatbed Safety Securement Group on Facebook. You can also Google and go to flatbedsafety.com. It is the premier
Flatbed-safety.com.
flatbed-safety.com.
Yep.
It is the premier source for flatbed safety and securement techniques and knowledge on the internet. So, gentlemen, welcome.
Well, if I can add in there, if you guys want to find us on social media, go to www.flatbed-safety.com and go to the bottom of the page. You can search our socials down there where you can just click on a hyperlink and it'll take you to our social media profiles.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dan. And today we're talking to Shane. Shane is a good friend of ours and one of the members of FSSG's social media team. And he is joining us to discuss the Jeremy Walker Foundation. This is a nonprofit that we are establishing for a friend that has passed away. You can look for the Jeremy Walker Foundation. This is a beautiful logo that was made for us. So Shane, go ahead and take it away. Tell us about yourself and how this foundation started and the gentleman behind it.
Well, the Jeremy Walker Foundation was started in honor of a close friend of ours, Jeremy Walker. He was a passionate and dedicated driver who fought through the ranks and started as a hotshot driver and came up as a CDL driver. He never passed a person that he didn't smile at, and he would put his hand out to shake anybody's hand that would take it. He was always quick to help someone and quick to help as much as he could. And through that, we've decided that we feel that drivers or people wanting to become a driver should have that path made a little easier. Both Jeremy and I, one of the biggest hurdles to getting our CDL was being able to continue to survive while we were doing the schooling. So we've decided to be able to facilitate people who want to be a driver by offering scholarships for their CDL school, a 4-week accredited CDL school, as well as the coursework through flatbed safety and securement and hazmat. Our goal is that when someone is done with our program, they are a fully certified Class A hazmat CDL driver that has had as little burdens as possible put onto them during the transition process from regular driver to professional driver.
So when with the training and the hazmat, so like how do you plan to I guess push these drivers in the right direction to get us started? Does that make sense?
Yes, we plan on reaching out to schools. We also plan on doing a section for felons specifically. Both Jeremy and myself have a checkered past. We're both felons, and the hurdles that come to a one-time felon
Did you freeze?
are horrible.
Yep, we lose
Who,
him.
me? No, I'm still here.
No, there he is. Hey, welcome
Okay. What was the last thing you guys heard from me?
So how do you intend on getting drivers down this path of success with the MPO, the Jeremy Walker Foundation?
Our plan is to reach out to schools, high schools. We specifically think that the younger drivers, the younger generation, is the generation to reach for the most part. Work with high schools and guidance counselors to let children know there's another option. these days, especially, the white collar world isn't what it used to be. When you see a bunch of people working at McDonald's that have college degrees, you know there's an issue. Children these days are taught that white collar is the only way to go, when you can make a perfectly life-changing, you can make life-changing money driving a truck. And that's what we want people to know. We also want to reach out and we want to reach felons. We work through the probation and parole offices through a selective process, knowing that we're not going to get a repeat offender, because we don't want a repeat offender. We don't want to pile a bunch of money into someone who doesn't truly care about changing their life. We want people that want to change their life. So first-time felons, people who are just kind of lost in their path in life, to give them a direction. And anybody that comes through our program is going to have a mentor that'll talk him through the whole process. A phone call, just a phone call away. And that's a very important part of becoming a driver, is knowing that you have support systems around you, just a phone call away.
Well, that is a very, very good and well needed program, nonprofit. So when did you meet? When did you meet Jeremy?
I met Jeremy. I started driving for TMC in June of 2022. Oh, excuse me, 2023. And I met Jeremy through the Flatbed Safety and Securement Group. And he started reaching out to me, and we started talking more and more. He helped me become a moderator with the group, and he also recruited me to be a driver for New Gen Hauling. Jeremy is to this day New Gen's biggest voice. Every driver that we have is because of Jeremy. And that was his thing. He liked to reach out to people and he liked to make friends. And that's what he did with me. He became the person that I could call when I was rolling down the road at 2 o'clock in the morning and needed someone to talk to stay awake. Or if I needed to gripe about the company at 10 o'clock in the morning, I could give him a call. And that was our relationship over the past year and a half.
It must have been hard when you lost him. I mean, it was hard for everybody, but when we all got the news, I mean, we all know or knew Jeremy. He was a good soul, hard worker. I mean, that man quite literally put trucking in front of everything. Ultimately, it's what cost him his life. So let's dive into the logo. Daniel, can you bring that logo up and just hold it on screen for a minute while we talk about the actual logo itself? And Shane, if I can go back to you while he's pulling up that logo, can you explain to our audience exactly the meaning behind a logo and why it's so unique? It is a hand-drawn logo. So let's talk to them about that. Can you do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep, pulling it up right now.
As you can see, it's a heart and a road on top of a steering wheel.
Some
the steering
wheel in the
is
background.
that my Bendix is going crazy.
Yeah.
So what you're looking at is we have a Kenworth steering wheel, and that was Jeremy's dream truck. He always wanted to drive a W9. The heart it was Jeremy's medical condition and what he gave to the road. And the road is suffocating Jeremy as he's getting ripped apart. Every part of this symbolizes Jeremy, from being a true blue friend to being a road warrior and to the road finally taking his life.
So what I see when I see this logo, so I see the heart is bulging on the outside. So the road is actually squeezing the heart. It's holding it together. Can we dive into that? It has a lot of purpose behind it. What do you think?
Well, Jeremy passed away from a heart condition. He had heart failure, and his love for the road is ultimately what prevented him from having his heart condition taken care of. He always had to get that one last load in. There was never anything else. Driving was his life, and that's why the road is squeezing his heart. because that's what kept him together for so long and ultimately was his demise.
So when can we expect the MPO to go live? Would you estimate?
I would like to have our first 2 to 3 recipients by this fall of a scholarship.
Right. Okay. But hopefully we can help you with that with our audience, getting the word out there about this up and coming MPO and what it stands for here. I think it's a very admirable cause. So let's dive into you specifically. Let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about your life prior to trucking, and then you getting into trucking, and let's just go on from there.
Well, from the time I was 18, I've always tried to be a driver. Um, I went to school. I started my CDL school up in Rhode Island when I was 18. Life circumstances ended up preventing that, and I followed a different path of drugs and crime and alcohol and all the bad things in life, and that continued for many, many years. For many years, I hunted and pecked through life just trying to survive. I've spent some time in prison. And finally, when I got to Minnesota, I was sane enough, I guess you want to put it, to want to attempt to go to become a CDL driver again. I was able to get my schooling paid for through the state, and that's how I did my CDL. Up until then, though, I've built grain bins for multiple years. I've managed the grain bin company. I have a family. I have 3 children and a wife. We've been married for 16 years now. Um, and trucking was always an admirable career in my eyes, but it was something I could never do because I was never on the right side of the law. And then finally those days came, and I discovered how truly life-changing driving a truck can be. Not just the money, but the freedom that you're allowed behind the wheel. When you're behind the wheel, you might as well be a bird in the sky.
So through all that, you wound up settling on TMC. Now, was that your first employer in the industry?
Um, Technically, yes. I'd driven farm loads when I did grain bins. I would drive our semi from farm to farm. We had a flatbed that we would take around with all our equipment. But yes, TMC was my first job. Um, and I like TMC. They're a very wonderful company, very by the books, and they stand behind their drivers very much. However, with my past, I don't like being a number, and unfortunately, with TMC, you're a number, and that was ultimately what decided for me to change paths and go with another company, and that brought me to New Gen Hauling, and that was facilitated by Jeremy.
Jeremy reached quite a few of us, touched a lot of different lives in ways that we might not ever be able to fully put together and know until we meet him again. So
Well,
go ahead.
I hopefully um in this next year, I'm going to be working on a book of Jeremy's life. I'm going to be compiling stories from people that he's touched. The book is just going to be a collection of letters to Jeremy from his friends. Um, and hopefully that's how we can fund some of the nonprofit as well through our book sales of Jeremy's life. The book
Absolutely.
will be titled Bathtub Got Your Ears On, so keep an eye out for it.
Bathtub being his call sign for the years he drove. Um,
Yes.
so your exposure to that is my golden retriever, letting everybody know that our mailman is here. Um, our I'm gonna have to mute this real quick.
So when you got into trucking, you went to TMC, then you eventually went over to New Gen Hauling. What are some of your lows in trucking and some of your highs in trucking? Like, explain to us kind of like somebody who's wanted to be a truck driver who might be listening to this podcast. He wants to know what it's like to be a trucker. Do truckers struggle? I know a common misconception or misunderstanding in the industry is that truck drivers are paid gold. Everybody thinks truck
Um,
drivers have money. So, um,
Single truck drivers have money with no families.
yeah,
For example, my TMC trainer last year made $117,000.
yeah,
Um,
it's a lot of money.
but it is.
Hmm.
And me, even as a small company driver, I made about 70,000. But
How long do you stay on the
you
road? To make save yourself, how long did you stay on the road?
um actually this year I've only worked about 7.5 months.
7.5 months, and that's $70,000 a 7 month.
Yep.
Wow. So about
Um
10,000 a
I
month.
had a breakdown with my normal truck. I had a breakdown and I was down for multiple weeks during the year last year.
So you're on track to push 120.
If we can make the spot market work for us, my truck is on track to make $300,000 this year, and I'll get 30% of that.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. But the
So
money
that's
doesn't outshine the fact that the first year I was on the road, I missed my anniversary.
Mm-hmm. That's one of
yeah,
the
Um,
things
that's
about
one of the
truck driving.
sacrifices
yep.
of the industry is you miss
You
life,
miss
you miss
everything.
anniversaries, you miss everything.
Yep. I feel sometimes that I don't even live at my house anymore. There's times I walk in and I feel like a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the sacrifice that we as drivers make to give our families the best life possible.
Right.
The downs in trucking has nothing to do with finances. The downs in trucking are all emotional and family connections. That's the downsides in trucking.
Yeah, it's
Um,
spending time away from family. You're missing events. You're missing quality time. You don't get to watch your children grow.
yep.
It sucks. I mean,
My my daughter's kindergarten first day of school, I was not allowed. I wasn't able to be there. I was down in Louisiana.
pushing loads.
My
Yeah.
anniversary, I was out in Virginia. I'm hoping I make it home for my anniversary this March. Um, that's on the cards, but I generally
What
I
could
try to
stop you?
stay out. Excuse me.
What would stop you from making it home?
Um, if I'm stuck waiting for a load on the spot market in Virginia,
Your company won't let you just
or
go home with the truck.
no, I won't let it happen because it costs too much money.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're such a small company, we're basically a family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all the drivers have to be on top of everything, just like we were owner operators.
So you can
Um,
repair your own trucks and
right.
watch your fuel.
Because we don't have the reason. Like for example, TMC. When I worked with them, I could tell that you get a week off for Christmas if you work the whole month before that, and that's what I was doing before I came up to New Gen. Um, so with TMC, they have the resources to allow me to deadhead from, let's say, North Carolina to Minnesota. New Gen, we don't have those resources. So
Define
whereas
what do you mean by resources for those who might not be aware?
finances,
Okay. Okay.
finances, our trucks, because our company is only just under 3 years old, our bank accounts can't cover $1,000 in fuel to go home with no load.
You don't
Um,
with bigger the fleets, it's the quantity of vehicles. If you're losing money on one truck, you got 20 trucks making
exactly.
for you. So you can afford that one truck to take a small loss to get the driver
Right.
home.
Yep. And that's exactly what it is. And then as far as flying home, that's not possible because I carry a dog with me in the truck. You need some sort of companionship, and I don't. It's too expensive and too troubling to fly with a dog. Yeah. Now, if I don't make it home for my anniversary, I'll get there as soon as I can, and then I'll take a week off and I'll spend time with my wife and my children, and then I'll hit the road again for another 4 to 6 weeks.
That's got to be
Um,
tough, man. Spending that much time on the road. I couldn't do it. There's no way.
hey,
I give you props for that.
it's my safe space. It's my own little world. I mean, I get in and I know my goal is to succeed for my family, and the only way I'm going to succeed is by keeping these wheels moving. And
So
that's what it ends up becoming.
So if that is something that you could change, what would that be? Something in the industry that you could change?
Brokers, the brokers, the lies that you're told, the lack of money that the brokers want to pay you, um, the lack of communication between A and B. The brokers are probably one of the biggest problems. Um, they, I feel they make everything more complicated than it needs to be. And they take too much money away from the companies and the carriers and keep it for themselves. I mean, I just hauled a load not too long ago from Tennessee to Akron, Ohio, and I was talking to the receiver and he casually asked me what I got paid for it. And you saw him, there was no misreading his face when he was surprised at how little I was paid as to compared to how much they paid the broker for the load. We got about 50% of what they actually paid the broker to haul that load. And all the broker did was make a couple phone calls. I mean, that right there is highway robbery. That should be the carrier's money. That should
So
be the money for our fleet maintenance that we don't have because the brokers make everything so difficult. And you can't, there's no recourse against a broker. Like if you go to a load and you go to pick up that load and it's not there, or you got to wait 10 hours for it, you can't put notes on that broker's page to warn other carriers about them. But if you're late to a delivery or late to a pickup, or you cancel a load with a broker, they can go right along and blacklist you. And then as a carrier, you're screwed. Like for example, it wasn't too long ago we had one of our drivers that had a load that was supposed to be just a drop and hook. It was a recovery load that we were asked to go recover a trailer from a broken down truck and bring it down to Atlanta and drop the trailer off. We got there and all of a sudden everything changed and it wasn't just a drop and hook anymore. It became a live unload with a trailer relocation. And if we didn't agree to that, they were going to blacklist us. And they weren't offering any more money to do the extra work. It's things like that that I have issues with the brokers. And Dan knows. Dan's called me a couple times before I actually had his name in my phone, and I pick up the phone with all the hostility in the world.
Yeah, I could immediately tell. You just said my number yet, did you? Yeah. So when a broker, somebody break it down for me. So I'm not entirely sure how it works. Somebody needs a load shipped. They have to contact a broker to ship the load. Is that right? So the broker gets the load. They contact a carrier. Am I on the right track here? Or the carrier contacts the broker to put on a load board. So the broker, and let's make math easy because I don't math good. We'll say $1,000 is what the load is getting, is what the shipper is paying the broker for the load to have it shipped. With your numbers earlier, you indicated essentially that the broker retained 50% of that. So basically, they got $500 for posting the load. You guys did the legwork by reaching out to them to get the load, and you guys got $500. For example, I don't know what the exact number was, but does that sound about right? They kept half of
For
what?
some brokers, yes.
Why?
Yes. Because they feel they can. That the brokers these days use us as puppets. They don't use us as equals. They just use the carriers as puppets.
Why is there no
And
regulation? Is there no regulations regulating brokers?
they don't I don't there's some, but they don't it's been unregulated and unchecked for so long that it's out of control. For example, the um not too long ago the broker transparency laws were re-brought up. My dispatcher asked the broker recently for full disclosure. When you ask for full disclosure from the broker, they're supposed to show you all the paperwork from the shipper, and you're supposed to see the 100% rate that broker is getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
The second she asked for that, she was met with a stone wall. We were taken off the load, and we never heard from that broker again because we asked for full transparency. So they keep us, like I said, we're a puppet, and they think they can just pull their strings and play with us.
So
There's a
really,
couple that are worse than others, but generally it's not. It's broker centered. It's not. Nothing right now is for the carriers unless you're a contract carrier.
so what would it help you more if the broker transparency would actually include, say, just like there are federally regulated websites that show companies and drivers based on safety rating and various metrics like that? Do you believe that that is something we should institute for brokers, wherein companies, if you've got a number that actually coincides with that broker, i.e., carriers have to have a US DOT number and an MCC number. Um, if we actually issued that to brokers and then you could track that and report brokers, would that be something that would, in your opinion, improve the relationship between brokers and truck drivers? Because we are not ragging necessarily, we're not dogging the brokers, all of them, because there are some good ones out there. But just like there are bad companies, trucking companies in the industry, we're trying to call out the bad brokers in the industry.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I agree with that. We we as a company speak about that all the time. Is why is there no recourse for the carriers when, for lack of a better words, get crapped on?
Yeah.
I believe there should be recourse for us, but there isn't. I mean, a broker can take the same load and spam post it basically all across the load boards. And then when you have carriers out here running for pennies on the dollar because they have multiple trucks, you
It
can't
hurts the
do
little
anything
guy.
as a small carrier. You're
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
there's no money to be made, and that's I think why a lot of small carriers fail. Um, Let me
It
actually
is.
look something up. I'm going to look up what the actual fail rate is for a small carrier in the industry. Does anybody want to take any guesses on that?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's 75 to 80%.
Yeah, I was going to say somewhere around 75 to 80%. And
Yeah.
also, a lot of that is, um, I feel like there's not enough education within our industry of what it takes to run a company. People think that since I can get my DOT number for free and then I just have to get a truck and trailer, then I'm going to make all this money. And there's not enough education, I'd say education or mentorship for these smaller carriers. And then that means that they start driving and they, out of their ignorance, they don't know how to price their freight yet. They don't know what it costs to run a truck.
So on average, it shows that 20 to 25% of new trucking companies fail within the first year, and 50 to 60% fail within the first 3 years. Now, it gives some key reasons to that failure, and that would be there's high operating costs, there's cash flow issues, there's regulatory compliance issues, driver shortages, market volatility, and poor business planning. So, I guess what are some ways to reduce that failure? Somebody's got some echo here. I think that's you, Shane. Is your headset disconnect? We'll wait for you. Okay, there you go.
Can you hear? Okay.
Yeah, so there are some ways that can be reduced. For example, like negotiating better racing contracts, maybe leverage fuel cards or other discounts to reduce cost, maintaining strict compliance with regulations to avoid those penalties, maybe even diversify customer bases to avoid um, reliance on a single source of income. Maybe even using factory companies or tools to stabilize your cash flows, or any other ways that these companies can reduce their failure, especially for small trucking companies, because that's a dream for most truck drivers is to buy that truck and then buy that second truck and then buy that third truck. But how can a driver in today's economy make sure that they're going to be successful? I mean, you would know firsthand being from a small company. How does your company's owner, how does he mitigate all this to keep the cash flowing? Because 3 years he beat the odds of 50 to 60%, so he's doing something right. So what do you think?
Um, well, being flexible is probably one of the biggest things. In the
And
past
the
year,
drivers have to be flexible too, right?
I think we've gone through 5 drivers um, of people who just think they can get in and run, and they don't realize a small company is a lot different than a big company. Um, your equipment, I have to say, your equipment is probably going to be the biggest reason you're going to fail. When you go to buy a truck, take that $1,000 and pay a mechanic to go inspect that truck for you before you sign any contracts about buying that truck. Because that right there, I mean, you can walk into a dealership and find a truck that's been used. It might have 400,000 miles on it, and you can drive out of the lot and that motor blow, and instantly you're on
Yeah,
the
I'm
line
hooked.
for
Yeah,
$100,000 of a truck and another 25 to $35,000 for a
just to
rebuild.
rebuild it. Yeah, that's
Right.
And that's
insane.
where, and
Yep.
that is an avenue where the big fleets can be part of the problem within the industry, but at the same time, if you're looking to start out and buy your first truck, some of those big fleets, I know Crete and Schaefer, they have meticulous maintenance programs on their vehicles. You're going to get a good truck, and they turn over all the records of everything that's been done to the
Yep.
vehicle.
Um,
Schneider
eh,
is the same way.
I
A lot of
know
your big fleets, they
personally,
will,
if I was going to go buy a truck, I would go right to the TMC truck sales, either in Des Moines or South Carolina, because most of their trucks, when they take
Shout
them
out to
off the
TMC.
road,
yeah.
right, most of their trucks, when they go off the road, they end up with an in-frame. A lot of them, they'll sell them right after a platinum overhaul is done. So
Hmm.
then you at least, that very high dollar part is taken care of. You can take care of an airline leak, but on the side of the road with no cost really except for a part and your 20 minutes of time changing that fitting.
Look,
But
TMC is known for having number one clean trucks.
oh,
They're known for their maintenance. So I mean,
yep.
if you want to buy a truck and you go to TMC, you're getting a good truck because they take care of their equipment, man.
Yeah,
So shout out
absolutely.
TMC.
And also
Yeah.
an underrated uh, component of that is TMC does the full dash package, the full gauge package on their trucks. A lot of fleets don't because it can be a little bit overwhelming to a new driver. But having all those gauges that tell you all the information about what your truck is doing is
Mhm.
is a
Is
great
super
way
important.
to keep ahead of a potential issue.
And unfortunately, with a lot of those big companies shying away from that, it's it's turning drivers into mindless drones. Even TMC's trucks are getting simplified these days.
Yeah.
Um, but like my truck, for example, I have a full gauge package in my truck. I know the second that I'm low on coolant, my temperature is going to go up. I know if something's wrong with my oil because I can see the temperature and I can see the pressure at all times. I know if my rear brakes aren't right. I know if I have a leak in my suspension because of my suspension gauges. It's all those little things that help make your life that much easier. Even though it's a lot of information to process at one time, it still makes your life easier in the long run.
And it also, um, with driving a truck, a side that is often not told to people is you will start to get tunnel vision. You zone out. As you have more gauges that you need to monitor, it prevents you from getting that tunnel vision, from just staring down the road and being entranced in the highway ahead of you. It keeps your eyes looking around. It keeps you actually engaged in the work that you're doing, which is ultimately driving that vehicle.
Yeah. And it's all those little things that help you battle the fatigue while you're going down the road, is all these little things that you have to keep your mind on as well as the road. I mean, but all these little things are able to stay there in the back of your mind. You're able to relax your eyes and work out your eyes by moving around. You're right. And it's very important to just help you get down the road. And
So,
all of it plays a big part into it.
so I've been very fortunate in that in my driving career, I've gone from starting at TMC and going through their phenomenal training program for load securement, um, and transitioning. I was in the fleet as they transitioned from the 379 to the early 579s, the pre-production ones, um, and even testing out some of the Cummins engines as they switched from Cat over to Cummins. But I've also worked with a variety of different companies, so I've gotten to see the differences in truck spec and how it affects the driver and how it affects the attentiveness of myself. I like to say I'm a safe driver, but as I got into trucks, it really only had maybe your 5 primary gauges, which they've simplified those down to now you have one air gauge that has 2 needles in it for your primary and secondary. It's like as it goes simplified and simplified, I found that I was more easily becoming just, hey, I've got a 300-mile drive. I'm just gonna, like, I check the gauges, but then it becomes less and less common as I'm starting to zone out because there's nothing I need to check. Um, Now I
Yeah,
drive
I
a
can see
vehicle that's
that.
got, I've got so many gauges. I've got a full gauge package and then some on the truck I drive now. Um, so that's a different ball game entirely, but it keeps me more engaged. Even if I'm bobtailing somewhere, I've got so many gauges that are telling me everything about my truck, but it also helps me to know. Case in point, I had a fitting on top of the radiator that came loose, and because of all the gauges I've got just for engine temp and my cooling system, I could actually tell, okay, there's something wrong. Before I dumped all of my coolant, I could see there was something wrong and I could pull over. There was a very small amount of coolant coming out of the fitting. I probably lost maybe a quarter gallon. But being able to see that and recognize, okay, there's something wrong. There's a fluctuation I shouldn't be seeing while I'm just driving with my cruise set. It saved me a potential major breakdown, and it saved a uh, potentially a tow and even possibly an engine rebuild if I overheated the engine. All for one gauge that might cost the company a couple 30, 40 extra dollars to spec that gauge. Maybe even if it's 100, it saved thousands of dollars on that repair bill.
Oh, absolutely. When you're driving a $150 to $200,000 piece of equipment, you want to know every bit of information about it you can.
And and that's where education, as drivers come into the industry, we need to work harder to educate the drivers so that they understand what those gauges are. Every
I agree.
every manufacturer might have a little bit of a different symbology on the gauges. Most of it is all standardized. There might be some small variances on the symbology, but the drivers we should be taking the time to train the drivers so that they know what the gauges are, and it will help both the driver if we spend, say, 3 extra days working on the gauges, teaching them that side of it. It might cost a little bit up front for the training, but in the long term, it's going to provide a better quality of driver and a safer driver because they're going to be understanding what they're doing and monitoring more.
Oh, absolutely. That distinction right there is the difference between a professional and an amateur. You can put an amateur driver in a truck and they still accomplish the same job, but they're not going to be as productive and as profitable as a professional. And that's a big distinction.
So, if there was anything you could change as far as equipment spec, what would it be? Then that includes like see technology added or taken away, or interior options that you believe are becoming more of a requirement for the modern driver.
Um, Probably the biggest thing for driver comfort, you have to have a microwave and a refrigerator and a power inverter. You have to give that driver the ability to feed himself and not just pour money back into corporate America through the inflated prices in truck stops and restaurants around. I think that right there is a very important thing. Um, I think all trucks should have full air ride packages. It makes it more comfortable. It's less harsh on the driver going down the road. Um, I think, and this one might seem trivial, but I think all the seats should have armrests on them. I'm stuck driving a truck with no armrest right now, and it sucks. You don't know where to put your arm. Your arm gets fatigued because you're hanging it off the steering wheel. Um, it's harder to find a comfortable position to go down the road.
Yeah. So
Um,
there used to be a thing that they called trucker's shoulder, where drivers their shoulders would wear out because of shifting gears and just hanging their shoulder their right arm all the time on the top of the gear shift, and it would actually wear out the shoulder, just like
well,
trucker's leg. Your left leg was used for the clutch, and that leg would always be stronger, but also show more wear.
I drive an automatic right now, so luckily I don't have to deal with the clutching.
You got
Um,
nowhere to put your arm. You got a wasted arm.
I know. I don't I don't mind the automatic for most things until it comes to maintenance costs. My normal truck, for example, has been down since September 26th with a transmission problem. The transmission's been rebuilt twice in it, and they still don't have it figured out. Um, that right there alone is leaning me towards a manual truck when I finally go spec a truck out for myself, just so I don't have to deal with that. But at
And
the same time, I
even
think
with the
about
gain in fuel economy, it's not offsetting that loss of revenue because the truck's just been down.
that truck breakdown cost me personally probably about $25,000.
Wow.
Um, it it caused it was so hard on the company because during that truck breakdown was about the time when Jeremy was starting it. The major health problems were coming to an end. So Jeremy wasn't able to drive. We had 3 drivers on the road, and that was it. And that's not enough to cover bills. My boss actually had to take personal loans out on his credit card to continue to pay me to keep my loyalty around. So that right there, that turned my stomach to automatics. Even though it's a joy to drive, all I have to do is worry about my gauges and the lines. Um, I don't have to worry about missing a gear going up and down a hill. But then I think about the cost. Like I know this is going to be 25 or $30,000
The
when
fact
that
that
bill comes in, if the bill ever comes.
the fact that your employer took personal loans out on his credit card to pay you speaks volumes, man. There's so many companies out there that would just say, "Yeah, well, we thought it was going to work. It didn't. See you later." And they leave the driver on the road, so to speak. So that speaks volumes. Shout out New Gen Hauling. So that's I like that. I just wanted to butt in and put my 2 cents in there. It's
And
see,
that's
it's always good. Like I always feel good when I hear a company going above and beyond to take care of their driver, and it means a lot more coming from a company with very little trucks. If a company that has only been in operation for 3 years has the ability to take out personal loans against itself to make sure drivers get paid, then why can't these larger carriers do everything that they can to ensure, hey, if this driver is having a medical emergency or this driver is sick, let's go into PTO. Why don't truck drivers? Well, some companies offer PTO, but they gripe and complain the moment you need to take it. Why don't truck drivers have the same benefits as like an office job? What do you guys think about that?
some of the megas do. TMC's benefits were okay, um, but they don't cover everything. Like one of my biggest gripes with TMC's healthcare coverage is not everybody is mentally perfect. Um, my family would have no mental health coverage as if I had insurance through TMC. My wife has a broken back, and with a broken back comes mental health issues. None of her therapy would have been covered. None of her antidepressants would have been covered.
I thought you were rolling backwards for a second.
I
Biggest
was
fear in
too.
trucks and the
Um,
industry is forgetting to set your brakes.
but it's things like that, and I think there's too many catches with your DOT physicals as to why people don't care to give you very good health insurance. Like even for her, they would not have covered it, even though she's not a driver. They would not have covered it. And those things right there, I'm just better off doing it on my own, and that's what I do. Um,
So a big gripe I've had is, and this is something that the industry, I believe, overlooks because it's something they don't think about, especially in flatbed. A lot of the places we go, we have to have glasses that are safety. They're impact rated. None of your vision insurance plans cover those. They'll
no,
pay a pro.
Z87 safety glasses are not covered by health insurance.
Yeah. So for trucking companies, if you're an insurance company, especially if you're vision, if you provide vision for your trucking companies, look at what they do. If it's a flatbed company, 80% of the time that driver is going to need to be wearing a Z87 impact rated safety glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Cover that under your insurance.
It
If
would be nice.
yeah, if it would seem like it's going to be a higher expense, but treat that driver, give him the tools that he has to have for his job. Not he needs, but he has to have. Otherwise, we have to pull it out of our own pocket. Um,
That's right.
that's that's actually part of the reason why I chose to wear contacts. I was a candidate for wearing contacts. I choose to wear contacts because when I looked at the cost of getting the Z87, what I was going to pay versus the contact price, I just chose. I'd rather just do contacts and be able to just get a pair of cheap plastic impact glasses from Home Depot.
Yeah, because as a prescription wearer, I mean, that's an expense every year.
Yeah,
It's not even a one-time expense. It's not like you can just say, all right, I spent $500 on my safety glasses. I don't have to do it again. Nope, every single year you have to redo it. And that's
Why
a
is it?
draining experience.
Why is it 500? I don't understand. So when it comes to medical insurance for truck drivers, number one, it sucks. There was, I think it was only one. I think it was Cigna that I had as a truck driver, and it barely covered what I needed it to cover. But when you have health insurance as a trucker, how do you see the doctor? I mean, you stay out 4 weeks at a time. You said sometimes longer. Where do you make time to see a doctor? And going back to the prescription glasses, why do they cost so much? Is it because we need them? Because they're safety glasses. I don't understand why the high cost for these things.
It I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you on that one. As far as me seeing the doctor, what's a doctor? I mean,
That's what I'm
that
saying. It's
I,
how do we make time as drivers? So we have
and
to
you can't.
basically. Well, so this is how it works. As a truck driver, you have to see a doctor. Well, if you have to see a doctor, you have to take a day off throughout the week. And if you're working with a company that doesn't have any kind of PTO or paid time off, well, then you just lost money. Case in point, last week I have insurance, and I had a medical issue that happened to me that required me to take the next day off of work without notice to see the doctor. That that day that I had to take off work cost me $280, which is my wage for that day, plus the cost of seeing the doctor. Okay, so we'll estimate here that that one day off cost me $500. So how can we make the industry stronger and actually work for the drivers? Because I feel like the drivers are just getting put in the back burner as long as the companies are making money. They don't really care. So how can we come together as a community of drivers and fix an issue like that?
Probably one of the biggest issues is that medical insurance is generally only accepted in the state that it's issued. Um, for a lot of medical insurance. So like if you live in Alaska and you have insurance in Alaska through your company, it's a pain in the ass to go to California and get something done. So like me, if I'm sick, I just drink a lot of Robitussin and take a day off. If I have to go home, because of the way the market is, if I have to go home for a doctor's appointment, I'm usually home for a week. So it's almost $2,000 I lose just for
Oh,
that
dude,
doctor's appointment.
I caught the flu on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And it took me 3 days to drive 200 miles. Okay. By the time I was actually able to make it home, my symptoms were subsided. but I was unable to get any kind of medicine other than OTC, like Tylenol, cold and flu. I wasn't able to see a doctor to get put on any kind of antibiotics or whatever else they do
Mm-hmm.
for catching the flu. So as a truck driver, I don't feel like the industry takes our health seriously. I feel like the federal government could do more to ensure truck drivers' health is actually taken care of.
I would
All
say
the federal government
incentivizing.
cares about is the fact that we don't have sleep apnea and we're not depressed and we're not on
Hell,
amphetamines for ADD.
most insurance doesn't cover sleep apnea machines in the trucking industry. So that why can't the
Yeah,
government help us? If they're so worried about the sleep apnea and CPAP machines, and it's a requirement for us to have it, why can't they help us get it? I mean, most insurance companies that we have in trucking, depending on where you work, I should say, don't cover the cost of the CPAP machine. Or I have a buddy that works for a company
yeah.
that I'm very familiar with, told him that the insurance company told him the CPAP isn't covered. The doctor says you need it, but we don't cover that under your plan. What do you mean? I pay so much for this insurance through my employer, but you're not going to cover what I need medically? I think the federal government should do more and can do more to ensure that truck drivers actually have good medical insurance and they're being taken care of. The mortality rate of a truck driver is so high because their health is so neglected. And I think that the government, if they really cared about us, would stand up and do something about it to ensure that we're taking care of our health and fitness.
Well,
Well,
incentivize truck stops like Iowa 80, where they have a doctor on site, they have a chiropractor. The One of the major health issues for truck drivers is lower back issues, lower back injuries. Part of that is because fleets order the cheapest possible seat they can in the trucks, and it doesn't offer you lumbar support. It doesn't offer good padding. It doesn't offer adjustability to the driver. But the other part is we don't have an ability to take care of our back by getting to a chiropractor. Well, Iowa 80 offers that. So incentivize truck stops to do that. Another thing is with the current hours of service, the old rules, the old laws for the 10-hour driving day actually were more inclusive or more inducive to encourage drivers to be healthy, to stop in the middle of the day, take an hour or two out of your day and stop and sit down and get an actual bite to eat. Get out of the truck. They used to be the coffee counter of knowledge, where the drivers would sit around and drink coffee and talk amongst themselves, talk about road conditions. I know our society has changed a lot, but our hours of service, we got an extra hour to drive and we became slaves to the 14-hour window.
Oh, I've
And
worked for
there's
several companies that take advantage of that 14-hour window. Everything's legal, but what driver in their right mind wants to work 14 hours a day, get a 10-hour break? That leaves nothing. It take a 34-hour reset on the weekend.
yep.
These carriers are expecting us to work 70 hours a week and have no life. We can't see a doctor. We're working 70 hours a week driving over the road. You're giving us 34 hours at the house. So I get home Saturday and I got to leave back out Sunday. Or you claim that you give us the weekend off, but you give me a load that's going 890 miles and I have to be there 8 a.m. Monday morning. I'm leaving on Sunday. I got a 34-hour reset. That's not a 2-day. That's not a 2-day break.
Yep.
I think companies are to blame here too. Companies need to understand that just because we have a 14-hour clock does not mean you need to push us to work 14 hours every day. Let the driver make that decision if they can or are willing to operate that CMV for 14 hours. That will lower, and in my opinion, that could actually lower fatalities on the highway. That could lower fatigue on the highway. It could also help with drivers' health. It could allow a driver more time to see a clinic or an urgent care on their route. It could give them time to stop at Highway 80 and see the chiropractor, which I've done that before. Ooh, that saved my back. I was in so much pain. But I think carriers also need someone to blame here as well, because they are taking advantage of the hours of service, and all they see is profit. They see the profit before they see the people that's making them the money. And I think that's wrecking this industry, and I think that's why there is a driver shortage of what is it, 800,000 drivers is needed by 2026 or what's the number on that? I don't know exactly, but there's a driver
There,
shortage out here. Nobody wants to drive a truck because they're working us into the dirt and paying us very little.
Oh yeah, I luckily my time behind the actual wheel, I can average $45 to $50 an hour.
yeah,
But that doesn't take into effect all the time I spent running into the shippers to get my paperwork and all that other time. That's just my actual time holding the steering wheel and going down the road.
so,
So
Um,
I pull livestock now. I've done everything. Flatbed's my passion, but right now my company moving from the flatbed division to the livestock division. And they don't run us too terribly hard. I mean, we are pulling livestock, but they understand we do need rest, so they do work with us. However, we'll say on a typical 70-hour week, if I'm working 70 hours, sometimes it might be more depending on the load count, but we'll say 70 hours, 60, 70 hours a week is what I usually do in livestock. My average wage for that is between $20 and $24 per hour straight time. Keep in mind, listeners, a lot of truck drivers don't get paid by the hour. They don't get overtime. We get paid cents per mile. We get a percentage of the load or we get a salary on the load.
yep.
And that's how we get paid as drivers.
that I do heavy haul, and that's how it's paid mostly for heavy haul. The most of the industry is going to be cents per mile. It's going to be a percentage of what the load pays, or it's going to be just a salary on the load. Um, Another way that companies still pay nowadays is by the hundredweight. Listeners, the hundredweight means if you can get an extra 100 pounds on the truck, you make a little bit more money. There are still companies out there that do that, and that is encouraging drivers to try and squeeze on. Oh, you know what? I'm 500 pounds over gross. It's not a big deal, but I'm going to
Oh,
take
yeah, I'll
that
just
load
run it.
because
Yeah,
I'm ma- yeah, I'm
complete this
making
for
extra
safety.
money. And it's like that's not safe for the driver. It's not safe for the public. Um,
No, it's not.
It's not even
a
safe for
big
the
area,
road.
no, a big area that I believe the reason that we are paid that way is because when they came up with the wage laws, there was no way to track truck drivers. We were the cowboys. We were. I mean, we still are in a lot of ways. The industry still is. We're out here on the road. We're away from office people. We don't. We are responsible for our own ship. We're the captains of our own ship. But we now have the technology that there shouldn't be an exemption for us. We should be paid hourly. We should have a pay system where we can clock in, which is what our e-log is supposed to be.
Like
It is
overtime.
supposed to be our time clock, our time card. Like we should be able to clock into that, and then we go hourly. That way, if we get stuck in traffic, we're not fighting to try and speed to make up that time. That way, if we have to go into a construction zone that states are doing, I know listeners, we all have been there, that 14-mile construction zone at 55 miles per hour for no reason, and all they've got out are some cones, and nobody's even working. It is
Yep.
as annoying to the truck driver as it is to you in your car, but we slow down for that. That's 15 minutes that we're doing 55 mile an hour instead of 65 or 70. We're losing money. We're losing several dollars. We do that multiple times a day. That starts to add up. Every day you go through 3 or 4 of those construction zones. It doesn't seem like much. Oh, well, you lost $10 today. Well, then by the end of the week, I've done that. I've had days like that every day for the whole week. I've lost $70, $80 for the
Or
week.
just the time it takes to get off the highway, use the restroom, and get back on the highway.
Yeah,
That right there is a 15 to 20-minute event.
yeah.
And if you do that,
I have
let's
15,
say you
20
do
minute
three.
events in the restroom. I'm just so put that out.
Right, right. So, I mean, think about it. I mean, just using the restroom, you can lose an hour or two of time depending on how much Taco Bell you ate the day before.
So
Yeah.
do you guys think that it might be so a reason why carriers aren't willing to pay drivers by the hour is because they don't want to eat that overtime cost because it's another example of profit over people. They want to retain as much profit as possible. You think maybe carriers are that might be their mindset?
I think it is, from the way I'm looking at it, it's they're afraid that drivers are going to abuse that clock. They'll just sit in a truck stop and spend an extra 2 hours on duty at the end of their day when they are actually off duty. Their
But
intent is they're just sitting there overnight.
to be fair, that also happens on a non-driving role, on an hourly
Oh yeah,
position.
they
That
don't,
still
but they don't
happens.
view that.
Right.
See, they view it as I see the employees doing it in the office, but I can monitor that employee in the office because I have that camera in the office that goes to my office that I can see them doing that. Whereas with the truck driver, they look at it as I can't just look at him. I mean, even if you have, say, you have a camera in the truck that's an inboard facing camera, that shouldn't be accessible when the truck is stopped. So then the driver stops, he goes on duty for 2 hours because he wants to get his extra 2 hours of overtime pay. Well, you don't know, is he working on the truck? Is he fixing something? I I carry a bag of electrical repair stuff. I have everything in it from male and female electrical ends, so I can fix any connection on my trailer. I have all the connectors. I have new wiring and stuff. I can spend 2 hours rewiring the back of a trailer that's got an electrical issue.
Yep.
But the driver sitting next to me, he could just spend 2 hours just sitting there on duty because he wants to collect his overtime. And there's no way that the company can really verify that. So they don't want to lose that money.
Well, I also think it's trucking isn't a Monday through Friday 9 to 5.
No,
And the way I think carriers look at it is, well, we give you 70 hours, do what you have to do. You get it done as quick as possible because you only have 8 days to do it. We're not looked at like we have a 5-day, 40-hour week work. And that's where I think the problem comes in, is we're 24-hour workers. Our industry, no matter what, is 24 hours a day.
there's
Now,
there's no such
granted, like,
thing as a holiday, a day off for the industry. There's
no,
drivers get a day off, but the industry on Christmas Day, if you go down to an interstate, you're going to see dozens of trucks go by every hour.
yep,
Just
yeah,
So,
we never have a day.
so I just did a quick search here on um my phone about comparing 1950 drivers to 2020 drivers, and it says unionization was high in the 1950s. It was Teamsters dominant. In the 2020s rather, it's low. And the average pay in 1950 for a driver was 75,000 to 105,000, and in 2020 it's 50,000 to 70,000. Work conditions, more predictable hours in the 1950s, and the 2020s longer hours, high turnover. And then the job security in 1950 was high due to union protections. And in 2020, it's moderate to low. So that is significant, man. That tells me that today we are making less on average compared to a driver from the 1950s. Why are we still doing it? I'm sorry. How do we justify getting back behind the wheel tomorrow with information like that, right?
Well, I'll also say the industry, if you looked at how long the driver was out on average in the 1950s, it was usually a day trip. There used to be a model called hub and spoke. Drivers drivers would go in, um, they would go into a local hub, and that's where they worked out of. They would do work around their area, and if the load had to go New York City to California, it sometimes on more rare occasions it would stay in one truck. It would stay with one truck, one driver, or usually two drivers. But most of the time, most companies, consolidated freightways, they transferred it. They transferred it hub to hub to hub. So a driver would go out, he'd drive 2 hours east, he'd get the load, swap it with another driver, and he'd go 4 hours west, swap trailers with a driver that had a load going east. He'd bring it back to his hub, where the driver on the next shift would hop in his truck, take that trailer, go 2 hours. That's how they moved the freight. So the drivers made more money. They were home every day. Our industry changed with the interstate system getting done. It changed away from that. And then with that, companies started investing more money in the equipment, and they felt as the equipment changed, the industry changed, the highway system changed. They moved to, we'll have one driver stay out for 3 or 4 weeks because now, well, they're driving a tiny apartment down the road. It's a lot nicer. And for a lot of drivers that considered themselves old school, I'm a truck driver, it's what I do, that was fine. Now we're at a time where people don't want to work like that. The
So
newer generation, they want a life outside of that seat.
so I was speaking earlier about the driver shortage, and I said what 800,000. So I looked that up as well, and the bottom line is that the trucking industry will likely need to hire approximately 1.1 million new drivers by 2026 to meet demand and replace retiring drivers. This means that at least 220,000 new drivers per year will need to be entered into the workforce to keep up with the demand. And what does it grow, like 3 or 4% every year is what it grows? It is insane. How they fix that is by improving what we're paid, improving our insurance, improving the quality of life behind the wheel for a truck driver. Just in general, we get treated like we're the scum of the earth out here. Some places don't even let us use the bathroom. They make
I
us use
can't tell
porta
you how many
johns.
places I go and you can't use the bathroom. You have a porta john or there's nothing. Some people have nothing.
Well, what
It's
they got is
horrible.
the good old thunder bucket, and some people in the audience might know what that is. And that's unfortunate. Truck drivers shouldn't have to use the bathroom in their truck because the place that ordered the product that got delivered won't let them use the bathroom. Come on, we're people too. You know, we have to use the bathroom just like you do. So the other day, where was I at? I was we were ordering food. Me and my wife were out somewhere, and I asked if I could use the bathroom, and they said, "Sorry, it's what do you say?" He said, it's a private bathroom. We don't let anybody use it." Or no. He said, "No, sorry, we were at the bank. That's what it was. We were with a Chase private client guy. He was talking to us about bank accounts, and I looked at him, and I'm a private client, and I said, 'Hey, can I use the bathroom?' He said, 'We don't have one.' So I looked him in the eyes, and I said, 'Where do you go, outside?' He started chuckling, but I was like, 'Look, dude, I'm a private client of yours, and you're telling me I can't use a bathroom here at a bank that I've banked with for 10 years, and I can't use the bathroom? I've been a private client for 10 years. You're not going to let me use it. It's the same thing on the road where truck drivers, many of them driving for many years, go to a receiver or go to a shipper, and they're like, 'Nah, you can't use the bathroom here. What do you want me to do? Go to the bathroom on your property?' It's just, and then you got these parking lots out here where drivers just throw bags of poo out the window, or they throw their bottles of pee out their window. You see them littering the highway with it,
Yep.
and that's another thing. Drivers do that because they want to save as much time behind the wheel to get down the road to get the next load, so they can keep earning money that they're willing to literally pee in a bottle, throw out the window, and litter just so they can avoid stopping because they want to catch that next mile and catch that next mile, catch that next mile. The industry needs to change this. And I think that if our voices are heard long enough that somebody might lobby for that change, but who knows, maybe it won't be us. I don't know.
I wish we could actually get our drivers in this country together like the Canadian convoy did for some sort
Yeah.
of solidarity.
We
Because
need
people in this country fail to realize that these trucks on the road, if we stopped for 3 days, you'd have no more food in your stores, you'd have no more fuel. You couldn't do anything if every truck stopped for 3 days. We are one of the most important things in this country. We keep
we
America moving. We keep them fed. We keep them fueled. We keep them clothed. Every single thing that a general person touches has touched a truck at some point in its life.
multiple times.
And
Like
people fail to remember that.
people don't realize how you go to Walmart, and that's not just been on one or two trucks. That's been on probably
Multiple.
everything in Walmart's been on probably six or seven
Yep.
because Walmart buys in bulk, then they break it up, and it'll go from a major distribution center to a regional one, and then from there it'll get on another truck, and that'll take it to the store.
Yep.
But in the process, that load might have been on a couple different vehicles. Well,
Well, you got the truck from
Amazon,
the shipping container. So
Yep.
you get the shipping container to the original shipper, and then it gets distributed from there. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, people fail to realize that, and people fail to respect us. Bucky's, let's just throw that name in there. Bucky's is, why are you going to create this such a big store and not let the people who deliver your things to your store use your restrooms in your store? I mean,
Yep.
they're drivers. I've talked to Bucky's drivers that are not allowed to go in the store. I mean, how are you going to treat people like that? We're
It's
human too.
it's a two-prong issue that the way they're trying to solve it is by treating us inhumanely. But at the same time, I've been in the industry since I was a very young child. A lot of it is drivers brought it on themselves. We as drivers weren't willing to call out other drivers. Walmart won't let trucks park in their parking lot. Sam Walton appreciated truck drivers parking in his parking lot. He wanted it to be a
Yep.
safe place for the drivers. A lot of that goes back to Walmart doesn't technically own the land that most of their stores are on. But the people that do own the land, they don't want their parking lots looking like trash. They don't want all the garbage everywhere. They don't want drivers will just pull up and you know what? Yeah, I could walk 200 feet into Walmart, or I can just take my whole big pile of trash and just drop it right out
Right
my
out the
window and
window.
leave.
Yep.
It's like, as
We
an industry, we have to stand up and say, hey, we need to hold these places accountable, but at the same time, we need to clean ourselves up. This isn't just them doing this for no reason. They've got valid reason. When
I
we're going
agree
into places,
100%.
yeah, when we're going into places and we're causing a local shopping mall, uh, to me said that they had last year something like $25,000 in damage to the shrubbery around the place because trucks were coming in and they weren't listening to the truck route signs. They didn't have an issue with trucks parking on the property prior, but trucks weren't obeying. Hey, take this route into the store. The entrances are bigger. Drivers
Yep.
wanted to force their way into entrances that they shouldn't have been trying to get into, and it caused 25,000 in damage. Now they don't want trucks parking there at all. You make a delivery, you leave. They don't want any. Well, I can't blame that. I can't blame the property manager.
No,
He's
I
he's
agree with you
having.
100%. We need to
It's
do
like,
better.
yeah, as an industry, we need to do better.
Yep. As drivers and our employers, everybody just needs to do a little bit better.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not that hard to throw your own trash away. And that's probably my biggest disgust when I pull into truck stops is everywhere that the tails of the trailers stick under over is covered in trash. There's places I won't even take my dog out to walk around the parking lot. That's how
Hmm.
disgusting they are. I will pick my dog up to carry him to the grass.
Yeah, and that it
I
shouldn't be
won't
like
take
that.
my kids some places because of that, and it shouldn't. You're correct. Society is failing, and we're helping them fail, and we're
Yeah,
crying for everybody to do better. When if we did better first, we might be surprised on how much leeway we end up with.
I I go back to when I drove over the road. I was kind of I'm the oddball. On Fridays, I would wear a red button-down shirt for Red Friday. Remember, everybody deployed. Um, but I'd put a red button-down shirt on. I had locations I could go to that store managers for Walmart would let me park in their parking lot because they knew I knew how to get in. I'd follow the signs. My objective, even today, my objective is always the only sign you know that I was there is because either something is there that wasn't there before or something isn't there that was. I try not to ever scratch anything to even rub a curb. I do my best to not leave any indication I was there. But I also presented myself in a way that I was so professional that they didn't expect me to be a truck driver. But then I would also make sure to I do have a trash bag. I put it in your trash can. If I was walking into the store to talk to the manager, a lot of times their security's already already talking to them, or the manager will be in their office. They'll see the truck pull in. If I see trash on the ground, I'll pick it up and throw it away because that tells them as a truck driver, if I'm doing that for them, I'm not likely to leave any trash on the parking lot. yeah, it might have been somebody else's trash, but if I'm picking it up, I had a lot of leeway with some of the stores I went to where they would be like, you know what, you're okay. We'll let you park here if the property manager has a issue with it. I'll tell them like, yeah, this is an individual that we trust, and
Hmm.
little
It
things like that. It would make other drivers mad, and they say it's not fair that they're letting you park here. Well, you just pulled in and dumped a bunch of trash on the floor or on the ground, and you just stared at it and walked away. I went over there and I picked it up and threw it away. Who do you think they want to stay here overnight?
I agree. It's amazing that it amazes me that so many drivers just forget how they were raised. I mean,
Yeah.
if their mother was there watching them, do you think she'd smack them in the back of their head if they threw the trash on the ground? Probably. I
Mhm.
mean, these are just basic ways to be raised. I mean, we're not in a third world country. I know people who were from this country were not raised that way. So why, the second you get behind a wheel, do you think that you're entitled to act that way, but then you want everything to be handed to you?
Yeah.
That's one of my issues is just act the way you were raised. You were raised with some common sense, so act like it.
Yep.
If you don't want someone throwing trash away on your lawn, don't throw it away anywhere you go unless it's in a receptacle. Don't leave mounds of toilet paper behind the toilets. And don't leave your used bidet
Or,
bottles behind the
or how about
toilets.
in the toilet? You didn't truck
Yeah.
stops, man. I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
know what
flush.
these truck drivers eat, man, but they just they just pile everything that they can find inside of a toilet and just leave it there. Or they
Yeah.
deliberately vandalize these bathrooms. Just why? Why
Why? Exactly.
I don't understand what goes through their head. And if that's their mental capacity, then they don't need to be driving a truck to begin with because that's disgusting and that's not professional. And in this industry, we need professionals behind the wheel. We don't need trash monsters who like to leave behind messes everywhere they go. Clean up after yourself. Flush the toilet. If you if you got a stain on the seat, clean it up. I mean,
Right?
if
It's
you
your
pee on
stain.
if you pee on the seat, clean it up. Lift the toilet seat. Come on, don't make another grown man come in and clean up your pee because they have to go poop. Let's be real. Nobody wants to do that. Quit being disgusting. It ain't funny. It ain't cute. It's gross.
Hey, there's such
Maybe.
a thing as a courtesy flush.
Yeah.
Just give it a quick flush. Mid drop, you just go ahead and give it a quick flush and keep right on going. Like,
Well, all I gotta do is lean up. All these new toilets nowadays, you lean up a
Right?
centimeter, and it's like a bidet is splashing against your bottom, man. It's
I
so sensitive.
I wear so much high vis. I think some of them, if I breathe in, if I inhale too heavy, they think I moved an old flush. I'm sitting there like, man, the thing just keeps running.
That's funny.
But there's so many things like that, and I understand. Um, some drivers think they're taking it out on the truck stops. I'm doing this because this Love's only has 35 truck parking spots. Well, yeah, but you know what? It is a gripe, but Love's is building truck stops all over. It would be nice that if every state we could have, Rafine, the Petro in Rafine, Virginia. It would be great if we had a truck stop like that in every state. We don't, but you know what? Rafine is, I think, 900 parking spots or 700 parking spots, something like that. Huge place.
I don't think I've been there.
It's a great place. It's one of the premier. Pretty much anytime I'm going through Virginia on 81, that's going to be a place I'm stopping. Great, great environment. It's got a clothing store. Unfortunately, they don't have a sit down restaurant anymore, but they have a great clothing store. They have a good store for having accessories and parts and anything you'd need. It's East Coast Iowa 80 basically.
Okay.
But like
Isn't that
Love's
called
might not
Kenley
be
95?
the one down in North Carolina. Yeah,
Yeah,
95 down in
is
North
that the one
Carolina.
you're talking about? Okay.
I was talking about Rafine, Virginia. It used to be the Whites. Back in the day, it was called Whites Truck Stop, Auto and Truck Stop. They had a bunch of really cool historical stuff all over the building. The family was into motorcycle racing and had antique motorcycles and firearms and all kinds of stuff. Really cool place. Petro took it over, and it's a lot nicer building, but they don't have the restaurant anymore. But again, hours of service, they couldn't make money off of it. But they have all those truck spots there. They don't fill up that truck stop very often, but that doesn't mean that you go into a Love's and deface it, because Love's is building 35 locations in Virginia. They might not have one big one, but they're trying to give us a truck stop on all these little side roads that, man, there ain't nowhere to stop. Well, Love's is saying, hey, we're going to put, it's only 25 parking spots, but hey, it's 25 that wasn't there before.
Yeah.
It's a small place,
And
but
it's 25 free spots.
Yeah. And I even like, this is a big thing that other truck stops could get behind. Love's is starting to number their parking spots so that if there's an emergency and we have to call 911, because let's say we fall out of our truck and break our leg, we can tell them I'm at the Love's truck stop. I can see on the ground, I'm in parking spot number 17.
I like that. That's a great idea.
Love's is starting to do that. And it's like, okay, it also has a side benefit of, if you get DoorDash brought to you, like, you can tell them I'm in this parking spot. But that is a big thing that, as drivers, it is a little thing that is making a big difference for us.
Yeah, I can see that that is really nice, because then you don't have to say, well, I'm in the blue Kenworth parked over here. It's just, I'm right here. This is where I am.
Well, gentlemen, closing thoughts as we end this podcast.
I hope that trucking as a whole industry can make some changes in the future with the expansion that we need. And I hope drivers, and that's one of the things I hope with the Jeremy Walker Foundation, is that we're able to actually recruit truly professional drivers into the industry and give them the support and mentoring they need to become a professional driver and not just a steering wheel holder. And there's a big difference.
Right on. Well, Shane, thank you for joining us today. Hopefully we can get you on here again. It was a very good conversation. I liked it. For anybody listening, we're going to come up with an email for you guys to reach out to us if you guys would like to be a guest, if you're a listener. If you're a truck driver or you're in the industry, we want to hear from you. We want to have a conversation just like this. We can go anywhere with it. So with that, Shane, we want to thank you for your time. Thank you for what you do for the U.S. and delivering our goods and keeping our shelves stocked and our bellies full. It's very admirable, man, and I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you for having me on and having the ability to bring some light onto the foundation and have some good conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And give that dog a treat. He did so good.
He did. He stayed in the back the whole time.
Such a cute dog. All right, man. Until next time, this is Tech on Deck. We'll talk to you later.
Sounds good.